How about now? We should be good. Good morning. Happy New Year. And welcome. Like, it feels good. I'm back. It feels good to be back at the keyboard. I'm going to get some tunes maybe and see if we can get this going. Audio is always the hardest part. But good morning. I've been thinking about a lot of stuff over the holidays. I hope you had a good break. I hope you had some time away from the keyboard. And maybe you're ready and refreshed and ready to get back at it. So here we are. Here I am, anyways, and I'm glad you're here. So yeah, Happy New Year. I need to come up with an introduction video. I need to have like something better ready to go. But if you're joining, let me know where you're from. Say hi. Let me know where you're from. That'd be great. Just a couple of reminders. I don't have a schedule, so ask questions. Hello. Happy New Year. If you come to my house for dinner and you leave hungry, that's your fault. If you're joining live and you have questions and you don't ask them, again, that's your fault. So don't leave hungry. Ask your questions. I don't have all the answers, but I got friends and they help out. I'll make mistakes, keep me honest, but let's learn together. Let's just hang out together. Hello. Let me know where you're from. That's always the fun part for me, right? And for my kids, like to tell them like, hey, yeah, I had somebody from not Kansas City. So let's go. Today I'm going to be working on the boundaries between platform and tenant. So if you've been around, I've been playing with Kubernetes. I run Kubernetes on my laptop, and before the break we were working on some YouTube integrations and kind of tying that into Spring AI and letting the AI kind of do some summarizing and generating thumbnails and kind of stuff. And while we were doing that, one of the things that we came up with is this tenant concept, which is something you'll probably see, you probably heard. I think that multi-tenancy in Kubernetes is an interesting topic, to say the least, but then also as a platform topic. So one of the things that I've been exploring and trying to figure out is like, what does that look like for you? And yeah, we'll see. So let me know if the audio's okay, if I'm coming through loud and clear, or if I need to make adjustments. But yeah, other than that, let's jump in. So here is, wait, why can't I move my mouse? Here we go. So this is kind of what it looks like right now. I've got the cloud. I deploy Cloudflare D, which opens up a bi-directional tunnel, and we'll actually get into some of that a little bit later as well. So it says, hey, this is where I'm at. So no matter what cluster I'm at, I get this ability to open up ingress. I don't have to do any port forwarding or anything like that. I get this kind of secured tunnel to the front. And there's tons of ways of doing that. But then one of the things that I was thinking about was, where does that control lie? So let's close this. We'll come back to that later. We started talking about like what does each tenant get? So here I kind of show, I made the assumption, I made a statement. Like, you want to have a few things. You don't want just Zipkin. You want to have, and these aren't there yet, but you want to have Zipkin, you want to have Prometheus. Oh. Hello. Let's try to make it look pretty. And you want to have Loki, for example. This idea that no matter what you're deploying to production, you want to have access to logs, metrics, and traces. So we'll get into that later. But the other piece is, hey, Steve, where are you joining from? Steve, let me know where you're joining from. I'm glad that you're here. And yeah, hopefully we'll learn something together. When I deploy things, what I did last time, where we left off was in this Cloudflare D. And this is Flux control. Think of the platform side. Hello from Denmark. Oh, that is wonderful. Wonderful. On the platform side, what do you want? What do you want How are you gonna allow people to connect? So one of those things is like, I'm just gonna give you some things, and my infrastructure. These are the things that are supported. These are things that are on the menu. Oh, look at this from Nairobi, Kenya. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. And remember, like, just ask questions. If you got questions, Happy New Year. I've got no agenda. I really am here. The goal, my thought is that I just want, hey, Luis, my thought is that for a long time, I had this opportunity. I had, people on Twitch that I was kind of co-working with. It felt like they were part of my team, and I just want to be that for you. I want to be that person that has access. I'm a Spring Developer Advocate. I don't have all the answers, but I've got friends. I've done some stuff. I got some experience, and sometimes it just helps to have somebody else, somebody outside of your team, to bounce ideas off of and to ask questions. I had that in the past, and it was awesome. And I know it was hard when I left that. It was hard to find places to go where you could ask questions and have access. And I also know it's hard to ask questions. So what I'll try to do is make this an environment where you can ask questions. And I know it'll take some time. It's like, hey, who is this guy? I'm not gonna tell him all my stuff. So I'm gonna try to just keep showing up every day and make it so that you feel comfortable asking questions, but also you don't have to ask questions here, right? I know asking questions live can be a little difficult. So I have this little button here where you can go and you can schedule time. And this is for anybody, right? Like, you can go and grab some time on my calendar and we can just chit chat about whatever it is you're doing. I should probably say, like, yeah, I talk about, like, these are kind of my core, right? Spring Boot, Raspberry Pi. I like doing things on the edge. Actually, I should do it like that. Spring Boot on the edge. Raspberry Pi. And then, right, build packs, Kubernetes. Right, just getting to production. Like, this is kind of where I'm at. Look at this. Oh, I am so happy that you're here. And, Scott, if you're up for it, I would love to just bring you on. Let's see if I can do this. Just because this is kind of our thing. For those who don't know, Scott is absolutely amazing. One of the smartest guys I know, and he knows all sorts of things. So I always, any chance I get to hang out, I try to jump on it because I'm always learning something from him. And this is a topic where, he might have some fun. So I'm gonna see if I can get an invite over to Scott somehow. Let me see if I can find a way to do that. I got an invite button here. And I'm going to send it to Scott, I think via LinkedIn, because that's all I have access to here. So, Scott, I'm sending you an invite. No obligation, but if you want to join, come on in. It would be fun. I'm glad that you're here. Super glad that you're here. All right, so this is what it looks like. Like, I have some thoughts. This is what we're doing. Again, ask questions. This is the way I have it set up right now. We're just doing bits and pieces. I've got no agenda. I've got no targets of getting to production anytime soon. Interrupts are welcomed if you've got questions. So what we talked about was like, hey, beyond the Loki, Prometheus, and Zipkin, this idea of how much control do you have as a tenant? Oh, here we go. Let's jump in. Look at this. See, and this is why I like StreamYard, is because I get to do things just like this. So, oops, there's going to be an echo. Let me turn off my audio real quick. Let me change this. I'm so glad you're here. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to turn off this music. I'm so glad.
Awesome to see you, Deshaun.
Awesome to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
I'm hanging in there. I'm back from break, and yeah, I'm just ready to jump back into it.
Awesome. Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Did you get any time off?
No, not
No?
really.
Okay.
Been working through, but I'm exactly doing a lot of gateway these days. So definitely.
Well, awesome. I am talking about like in Kubernetes, how much control do you give to a tenant versus like where is that line? Where's that boundary? And one of the things that we were talking about before break, I was saying, hey, yeah, each tenant gets their own Prometheus, their own Grafana, their own Zipkin, and kind of landed on that. But also, I use Cloudflare D as the ingress. So I set up each one so I can have the same ingress set up. I can take a tenant definition and I can deploy it to any cluster. So it gives me this flexibility to say, hey, yeah, this tenant is running on this cluster, and then I can switch it. I can do active active. I can do all these cool things if I have this well-defined tenant and all of their resources that they need. So here
Yeah.
we are. One of the things that came up was like, hey, where do you put those lines? Somebody from the audience was playing along, and then they asked the question about certificates and where do you define those routes. So where I landed on was as I'm moving these things to a tenant, then I can include something like Spring Cloud Gateway. So as the menu, I'm going to throw this out and you can throw it back. As here's what's supported. We're going to route everything ingress. We're going to route it all to your Spring Cloud Gateway, and we're going to give you that flexibility to route your traffic inside of your domain, inside of your tenant. What are the problems with that? What might go wrong?
So, so there are a few things that can go wrong, right? I mean, in the end, there's a nice thing about it's always a matter of the balance between the freedom that we give our developers, because we want developers to have freedom, but we don't want cognitive overload.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in many cases, I think that we go more towards the freedom to developers, and then we end up with zero standardization in our environment, terrible security practices, to say the least, and debugging and maintaining anything becomes an absolute nightmare. I think that a great way of solving that is things like Spring Cloud Gateway for Kubernetes, which is a commercial offering, but that does wrap it up and gives me governance that can make it work through policy management. But I think that without good policy management, it's extremely challenging to manage that at scale, to do it at the tenant level. In the end, too much freedom is not a good thing, right? We also don't want to lock down developers so much, because the more we lock down developers, the more they're going to find some other platform to go to that gives them the freedom they want. And then we bump into shadow IT and all of those issues, right? So it's really a matter of kind of balancing those two. A developer doesn't care about infrastructure and shouldn't care about infrastructure, but he doesn't want to be blocked when he wants his application to work in a specific way.
Yep.
And it's all about finding that right balance, which is what I think platform engineering is all about.
Yep. Trying to find that balance. I love that. Trying to find the right balance. So this is it. Like, one of the other things for everybody is like the way that you articulate, and sometimes just the different word, the different perception or perspective. It clears things up. Find the right balance.
Right.
And that's what I'm kind of doing. This whole experiment is like, let's take a look. I've got Java Grunt is the domain, and what I've put in there right now is Cloudflare D. That's the ingress, so that I can take this Java Grunt. I'll show you kind of the example. I'm using Flux CD as this deployment. Again, most of this is Raspberry Pis. There's some Nooks and stuff, but edge case, let's do tiny workloads, and a lot of these are native images for ARM64. So this is my laptop, K3D Juice. And if I take a peek here, I can see the only thing that's deployed here is Knative serving and a couple of tenants. So in that tenant, in each of those tenants down here, we'll see that, hey, I've got Cloudflare D. And RBAC and where I'm getting those sources from. So the way that
and by a tenant, are you referring to a namespace basically that just has a bunch of other stuff tied to it?
Yeah. So the way that I have this in my head is here. If I go to GitHub, I said there's Deshawn-io, which is Deshawn.io is the domain, but it's just got a couple of things in there. It's got a couple of services and this Flux repository. This Flux repository is the contract that says, here's how I want things deployed, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to use Knative, but that's just the contract I'm using. I can define and I can control a lot of things using this same contract, but it doesn't mean I have to use Knative serving, because one of these things that we'll explore is I could literally just deploy this version of this container. I could deploy it to Taz, right, where there is no Knative. I could do this, but really I'm giving the tenant a little bit of flexibility on what they might want to share and what they could pass along. So here's an example. So each one of these tenants has this contract, this API, and right now that API is Flux. That says, here's what I want deployed. Here's how I want it deployed, and you can kind of define what's going. So that's the contract. But with that, so that's what's being synchronized. Is that Flux repository. I can take a look here, and that's that Flux repository. That's kind of the convention that we're going along with. But then I also pass in Cloudflare D. I'm saying, hey, I'm going to give you ingress to your system. So here's why I was doing it, right? I can do it on a per service basis, or because this on the platform side, this kind of makes it so I've got to control things and I've got to make updates. Oh, you want to add another service, another domain? Okay, I've got to go and modify, and that's a little friction, right? If you decide you want to add an auth service to Deshawn.io, then that's friction. That's a ticket or something else that needs to be done, because this is the platform, right? I don't necessarily want to give tenants self-service access to the platform configs, right? This is
exactly.
I kind of wear the two hats. So where I land.
Yeah, what I would do in this case, Deshawn, like once you get it all laid out, like I would definitely look at Crossplane as a great way to wrap this up into a composition that would basically be, you would have a resource called Tenant. And the great thing with the way that Crossplane works is that you can basically take a bunch of resources, throw them together in this nested YAML configuration, and define your own API that when you create it, it's going to create all of those backend resources with patching from one to the other. So it would create the Cloudflare D, ingress, wait for the IP to return, and then it would set that IP up on, for example, a service or into the Spring Cloud Gateway, and you can kind of chain things together. But that way you can have a declarative API above what you're trying to do here, because that's really, I think, the brilliance of Kubernetes, and where I struggle with Spring Cloud Gateway open source in the Kubernetes world, is that it's very easy when you do a kubectl get all -o YAML to understand what's running in Kubernetes. It may be a large wall of YAML, but it's declarative and easy to understand. The second the configuration is inside of a container, and I need to now go to a Git repo and look at the source code and understand what's there, even if you're using the config file in the YAML configuration of Spring Cloud Gateway, it still makes it very difficult to understand what the state is when I'm trying to debug something in Kubernetes. That's where Spring Cloud Gateway for Kubernetes kind of bridges that gap, or other ingress controllers like Contour, Nginx, things like that, which really bridge that gap, because being declarative makes the troubleshooting a much easier task to understand what is running, and then policies can be easier as well.
Excellent. Love it. So where I'm at now is I'm just saying, look, I'm not going to figure out your routes. I've been in that seat where I had to go and open up, F5 rules and learn the F5 API and all that kind of stuff. So here, I'm just going to say, hey, anything that's coming into your domain, you can route it. And, right, I could still do all of that config, all the Spring Cloud Gateway config, what you were just referring to. If I go back over here, I put it into a YAML, and it is inside, but I could move this out into a Kubernetes config map. I could do that exact same thing, so I could see exactly where
bind that in.
Yeah, I could do that exact same thing, and this is something that we can explore. I love, again, your perspective.
So, exactly, because I think that would make it a lot easier to get the visualization of what's actually going on. within a Kubernetes world, right? It would make it a bit easier to understand and to help someone troubleshoot. Although I do like the idea of separation of concerns, right? One of the brilliant things, I think, one of the most brilliant things that cloud ever did in AWS was there is a clear contract. What is AWS in charge of? What are me as the customer in charge of? Yeah. And that's kind of what you're trying to build here, it seems, where like, hey, Cloudflare D, this is your domain. Great. You have your tenant. Have a nice time. Anything that happens from the time it reaches that domain on, that's on to you, right? Yeah. I'm getting it into, the gateway pod. From that point, it's only up to you, and you figure out what goes on from there.
Yeah.
And that may work for a lot of teams.
Yep. This is the kind of the picture that I always drew, like the tenant. The contract between the tenant is with the platform, right? This is where the contract is, right? The tenant does not have a contract with the IaaS. The tenant has a contract with the platform, and the platform has the tenant with the IaaS or the infrastructure. So back to this Flux idea is like, hey, yeah, like I'm not going to let you, well, I could say, hey, if this application needs to be in AWS, then let me know. Like throw some annotation here that says this must be in AWS or this must be in Germany or wherever this workload needs to be. Give me those constraints. We'll come up with that later. But this idea of if you don't have those constraints, you're letting the platform decide where that lives, right? Exactly. If you don't have these constraints, if I don't have any of this or any of these, right, you're giving us flexibility, and there'll be some defaults. So one of those other concerns, one of those other topics that you brought up is like those conventions. How do we make sure that things are coming in the right way? How do we make sure that, we haven't set up a wild, wild west? And one of those other things, you're familiar with the app accelerator concept, right? Now you have this Spring CLI, just those conventions of what is that path to production. So one of the other opinions that I have is when you're delivering code to production, I really don't want you to build containers. As a developer, I don't want you building the containers. I would like to build a container. So one of the other topics that I touch on is like, one of my conventions is if you tell me this v0.0.13, if that's what you've defined as what you want deployed, there's not a container there. I'm going to build it. You're telling me this is the tag in that repository. This is the tag, the source code tag in that repository, and that's kind of the convention. So here, Deshaun, com, Java Grunt Service Gateway. If we go over to that tenant, it's in Java Grunt. There are tags, right? There's these tags, and I'm just saying, hey, this is the version that I would like deployed. And in my head, what we'll get to later is that idea that path to production, I'm going to be in control of that. I'm going to use build packs, and I'm going to put in all of those security. I'm going to make sure that those images are patched, etc. But I'm going to take care of that. All you got to do is tell me the tag that you want deployed. So you don't have to worry about.
So who deploys the gateway in this platform? Is it the platform or the tenant?
The tenant.
The tenant does. So all SSO configurations and things like that, they have to deal with as well. Yes. Correct?
Yep. So there's that. You're going right to where we're going to go next, right? In this example that I've got deployed, if I go to javagrunt.com, hey, this is a pass through, and it goes to the regular website that's hosted on GitHub, and all of this is public. It goes to the GitHub pages, the website that's just an old blog that we're sitting there. But one of the things that we built last time, I used to have it at youtubelistener.javagrunt.com, and I was like, this could get really hairy. Because what about just SSL, just certs? If I make everything through javagrunt.com and I'm having these different contexts, I'm giving you the flexibility to deploy these different contexts, then I've handled the cert conversation, right? In my control, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to handle certs for starter.javagrunt.com and javagrunt.com. I can handle that. I'm still going to pass everything through to you, to the tenant, and this is where I expect it to be, right? And we could change that convention, but hey, here's where I'm passing things on. And again, this is Knative under the covers. but I'm
Exactly.
going to route this traffic to you. And then in yours, right, in your gateway, you get to handle the routes. You get to handle all of that config. So we have, yeah, there's a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
So in general, I think it really depends, right? And I don't think there's ever a, glove that fits every hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no one size fits all with a platform. I think that for a lot of teams, this works really well. I think that overall Spring Cloud Gateway, like most API gateways, convolute what an operator really cares about and what a developer cares about. So like SSO, the developer doesn't necessarily have the credentials to Azure AD to set up the client ID and client secret and shouldn't need to care about that because the operator should. And currently in this flow, it would still be ticket ops, right? It would be, hey, send me a Jira ticket, send me back the client ID, client secret, and then I can configure, versus having like the operator would create a gateway and then I would sideload in my config,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say almost like the way that I would view it is have like the route configuration be the contract,
Uh-huh.
maybe that they have to save in a config map at a designated name, and you deploy a gateway for them automatically with like SSO configuration or something like that as part of the tenant. And then they have to create that config map with their routes, right? So they're just adding route configurations as another config value, right? Technically, they could override SSO and they could add in more values because you're giving them the ability to set a Spring
Yep.
profile, basically.
Yep.
But you're giving them out of the box same defaults in a gateway. They don't need to manage the gateway. They don't need to deal with upgrading the gateway, upgrading the Spring Boot versions. I know that it's easy these days with Open Rewrite and things like that, but it is another code base that needs to be maintained.
Yep.
Versus if that's a platform service,
Yep.
have the platform deal with that. Just have them give you a config map, right? Say, hey,
Yeah.
tenant name minus route config is the config map name.
Yep.
And as long as you create that, we will mount that into the Spring Cloud Gateway pod and you will get your new route configuration. And then we allow them to have a declarative nature of configuration without making them deal with infra details that we would today.
Yep. So the infra details, I think this kind of falls into the same space. The data, right? Any of the data tier, right, that I'm doing stuff here. Again, I like to point out that my children will never deploy active passive. So this idea that all of these data services, whatever we do, the way that it's going to look is it's going to look like this across regions. There will be, active data. And I kind of leaned into Redis for many reasons, but I can have these different regions connecting to the same data tier, right? Think data service, think even data cluster, right? We can get into the specifics later, but they've got their own access to data services and it's going to be consistent. It's going to be an active. I just refuse to do it any other way. So as what's on the menu, you have Redis, you have Gemfire, you have Yugabyte. These are some of those options that, again, what's on the menu for how are you going to deploy these things? You only have a certain handful of things that are on the menu. Right?
Exactly.
This is the way that we're going to start. So again, this is I think common, right? You don't get to, as a tenant, you don't get to just go to your platform and say, I need Gemfire. Right? There are services that are on the menu that are supported. You can't say, oh no, I want to switch from Postgres over to MySQL for a reason. You have to have, in each organization, you've got to have somebody that understands those things. Whether you've got a commercial support license or not, you've got to have somebody inside of that platform team or inside of the organization somewhere that understands the things that are on the menu. And there can be some first wave, like, hey, I want to go and I want to have a conversation about why is Knative serving here for ARM64 and like what are the differences there? Like, tell me, why are we using KPAC? Like somebody that can understand, or I'm running into an issue. You got to have some expertise in the building. You can't just say, hey, willy-nilly, yeah, go deploy whatever service you want. So this,
Exactly.
one of those contracts,
Now,
right?
the one thing I will say also is you were saying that each tenant, you guys decide that it's going to be like Prometheus, Grafana, Zipkin, you're going to play for each tenant, right?
Yes.
Is there a reason you decided to deploy for each tenant instead of having like a multi-tenant Grafana and doing an organization per tenant or things like that? Because the one risk here is that you end up with huge resource usage per
Okay.
tenant. A tenant is now an expensive unit.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So this idea, right? I've got each of those. And my unit of measure is I'm using Raspberry Pis, right? That's what I'm deploying is Raspberry Pis and other single board computers. That's my unit of measure. If I put those things inside of a tenant, I have these single resources. The idea was just like I have here, there would be aggregation, right? If I've got that same thing deployed in multiple places, I'd still have aggregation to some other single source.
Right. I'm just worried about the resource consumption, meaning Prometheus, in the end, any container you run up is going to take up resources, especially if you're doing SBCs, right?
Yep.
They don't have many resources.
They don't have many
And
resources.
Prometheus and Grafana are not cheap in terms of resources. They're not crazy.
Yeah.
Zipkin's very efficient. But, Prometheus less so, and Grafana even less than that. Having those per tenant, maybe like Prometheus and Zip can make more sense because they also have the data and you want data separation between tenants. But like Grafana as just a visualization tool, maybe that makes sense to have as a multi-tenant offering and not per tenant to lower the resources, right? These are the conversations that I have with customers consistently of hard tenancy versus soft tenancy. Are you deploying a full cluster per tenant, or are you deploying a namespace per tenant? Because namespace per tenant is soft tenancy in reality, right?
So let's dig into that. So what I was doing is I'm doing soft tenancy. So in these tenants, right, on this cluster K3D juice, let's take a look here. Let's bring this one over here and let's just take a look at what that looks like. K3D juice. So we'll see that, hey, I've got a namespace for Deshaun.io, that tenant. I also have a namespace for JavaGrunt, that tenant. So soft tenancy is what I've got. So there's this concern, right? If I have a shared service, Knative serving is shared. Cube is there, Flux is there, but everything else is kind of namespace driven. So when we go back to why would I have and this is what I started doing. I started making it so that Cloudflare D was shared. I had one per cluster.
Okay.
All right. But the problem with that is then if I wanted to move JavaGrunt from this cluster over to this cluster running Harifi, then I've got to change that ingress. I got to make changes. If I do it on a per tenant basis, I can literally here, this is
right. Pick it up and just move it.
So if I want to deploy JavaGrunt over to this other cluster, this is what I'm doing. So as a platform operator, engineer, this makes it really easy for me to move things around.
Right.
I do a git commit on this, and actually, let's just do it. Right. Let's just show git status. Hello. Git add, not that one. I just want to commit this one. I don't want to commit this. I can remove this. Tenants JavaGrunt. I can remove that. So let's add. Wait, get RM tenants. I don't need that. We'll come back to that one later. All right, git commit, add JavaGrunt to K3D Tanzu. So now because I'm using FluxCD, now I have Java Grunt deployed in these 2 different clusters.
Mhm.
It'll have ingress in both clusters. So it's going to set up, it's going to say, hey, Cloud4D, I'm over here. And these clusters are in different regions in my house. I've got
Right.
2 different networks. So I got 2 different regions.
Okay.
Um, so they're separate physical networks, separate electrical networks. They're in the same building. But
Nice.
so we have this separation. So now they're going to be deployed. And yeah, and that's all I have to do. So right now we're looking at K3D Juice. Let's switch over to, oh, it's on a different computer. So I can do them side by side actually. Let's go over to that one. Can I do this? And let's just show. And it'll, I want to hurry up and do it so that we can see it like actually being deployed. Hello? Oh, it's not on. That computer's not on. Let's do it to
Okay.
another cluster.
But that's awesome. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense, right? The idea of the portability of a tenant is huge here.
Now
I
there's a trade-off,
unfortunately
right?
have to jump
Hey, this is
onto
great.
another call, but this
This is
was
great.
awesome.
I'm so happy that I got to hang out with you. And again, I always learn stuff, and I would love to do this
Me
more
too.
often. I'm going to try to do this every day, 8:30 to 10:30, so at the same time right now, and that might overlap on occasion.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for hanging
Awesome.
out.
Have a great day,
And
Deshaun.
it was my
Great to
it
see
was a
you.
pleasure.
Great talking with you. Bye bye.
Take care. So man, so lucky. Hi everybody, that was fun. I'm a big fan of Scott, and again, that's the thing that I want to be able to do. I want to be able to like have these conversations and think through ideas. We make these assumptions, and sometimes it's nice to get validation. And Scott's one of those people on the other side of the world. Scott is one of those people that I respect a bunch, and I love having that conversation because yeah, he's making me think about a bunch of stuff. So what did you think? I'm glad that you're here. Hello from India. Wonderful. Robotech. Welcome back. I'm glad that you're here. So let's keep on going. So hopefully that conversation all made sense. What I was trying to do. So I deployed this. This cluster is not up and running, but I could deploy it to any cluster, right? I could do the exact same thing to this ARM64 cluster. I could say, hey, make a new directory. Right, and this one is up, and this was one that I rebuilt, right? I can say, see, and I can paste it over here, and I can say, hey, just deploy it to this cluster. Add, and I go here, get status, get commit, add Java grunt, tenant, get push. So now this is going to deploy to this ARM64 cluster. That's it. DMOC says both approaches have their own pros and cons, right? It's all about the trade-off. Exactly. That trade-off. So, and every organization has like different winners, different things that have different weights on how they're going to make their decisions. I'm just doing one example, right? And you are so right. Like there's pros and cons. I'm going to work through this one example. I'm going to try to do something because my goal is DMOC, like for you. What would be awesome, right? The best validation that we can have here is I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about somebody that's like, hey, I want to show you my application. When I use Cloud Foundry, I had this like nice org space separation, this nice way of defining what data services I need. And I want to like mimic that as much as possible. That's why you probably saw Karifi over there. Like there's these patterns that work. But ideally, what would be nice if I could say, hey, DMOC, I want to give you, because you're awesome and you're always showing up and I appreciate you. I want to deploy your stuff. I want to give you access to my little platform here that's running on Raspberry Pis. And we talk over the conventions, or I document it. That'd be the better way, by giving you something like a backstage that says, here's how you get started. And then we go and we find your, I don't know if this is you or not. It'd be awesome if it was, because I see Android right out the gate. But it would be cool for me to just be like, hey, yeah, all you've got to do is point me to your GitHub org. And if you have a Flux repository there, I'll take care of it from there. And then it'll just get deployed to my infrastructure. That's the goal. That's what I'm trying to work on here. If I can give you some like quick start, hey, here's how you deploy, get you a hello world. that would be the goal. That's where I'm going to. But we're on a journey. There's trade-offs. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But this is what we're doing. So here, I'm wearing both hats as a platform engineer and as a app dev tenant on this platform. And right now, I've deployed this. Let's go take a look. Let's go see that. If I do kubectx arm64, right? This is the kubectl git nodes -o wide. Let's hope that everything's running. Oh, we got some nodes that are not ready, and I'm concerned about that. One second, I'm gonna go peek at those real quick. All right, now, so those nodes ought to come back up. Those nodes are Libre computers. They were unplugged for some reason. I stood them up before we left. I rebuilt those clusters. So yeah, let's get those. Let's see if those come back up. That'd be nice. They are not quite ready. But the idea here is those should come up. Hello, Jonas. Welcome. We're picking up. Jonas, we're here. We're talking about this concept that you and I were talking about before break. If we're going to make Cloudflare D and all these things single tenant, why not make a Spring Cloud gateway? Why not pass these things? Hello, welcome. Let me know where you're from. If you're dropping in, let me know where you're from. That's always fun, especially for my kids. And this is what we're doing. We had Scott on earlier, and we talked about some of the pros and cons. But I like this. I like this pattern. It's going to make it really simple for me to do going forward. So hey, we're almost up. We got one more that's not quite ready. I'm sure it'll be ready in a second. But what we're doing is we're going to say on Cloudflare D, I'm going to just pass through everything to some known gateway. And from there, from that gateway, the tenant gets to have all of that flexibility on controlling the routes. Oops, let's go here. I think one of the things that Scott brought up, I think these route configs, in order to debug and make sure that things are consistent and following conventions, maybe set this up as a config map that can be audited and tracked. Hello. Oh, wonderful. Welcome. I'm glad that you got to see me and my son at the Montreal Jug. So welcome. I appreciate you dropping in. And Jonas said, did a bunch of Spring Cloud Gateway setup during the holidays. Perfect. I didn't do a bunch. I made this one little change where before the break, we had our YouTube listener and we had Zipkin deployed. And now I've said, hey, maybe you don't want to deploy Zipkin. Maybe you want to protect your Zipkin. So if I put this back to the tenant, I can give you, Jonas, for example, I can say, hey, if you want to have Zipkin open to the world, cool. But if you're using Spring Cloud Gateway, you can set up permissions. You can say, hey, you've got to be authenticated, or you got to give me, you got to give me a token that's already been signed in order to have access to these things. So you have this kind of control. And one of the things Scott brought up, perhaps before you got here, was like, what about SSO? Like, how do you do that? How are you going to set these things up? And that really falls into, there are going to be some things that aren't automatic. There's going to have to be some different patterns that we follow on how do you set up SSO. In my head, I was going to have a GitHub. Let's just do the GitHub off. I think that's pretty consistent, at least to start, right? We'll put more things on the menu as we grow. But to start, there's GitHub off. And then we can say, yeah, if you're authenticated with GitHub, you can have access to these things. Again, we're trying to do things in the open as much as possible. But then you've got this flexibility of setting up those routes. And all I've got to do down here in my tenant, again, the platform hat is, hey, I'm gonna pass this through. I'm gonna set it up so we're consistent no matter which cluster I deploy it to. Oh, look at this. And you got your gear. Fantastic. So let's go. Let's see what that looks like. So what I did just a minute ago was I realized that, hey, I don't have, I had some nodes that were on. Everything's healthy now. Now I can go in here and I deployed the Java Grunt. So this is, it looks like it's having an issue. I wanted to deploy this service. It's saying create container config error. I wonder why. So let's just, I wonder if it had something to do with, so this is on the Ampere box. It said, hey, there's something. Let's take a look and see if we can see anything. It's waiting to start. Oh, so maybe let's just do this. Let's see if we can just restart it. It's always fun to just do these kind of things live, right? The whole idea was, hey, I want to deploy this tenant to a different cluster to show how easy it is to deploy. But it's having some issues. Why would it be having issues? It's waiting. Oh, I know what it is. It's the secrets. It's the secrets. Sorry. In the way that I've got this set up, and if Pink Emma's not here, I'm going to try to do this without blasting all my secrets away. But I got a little setup here. I show you how I'm doing it. This, I need to do this. Except we're not going to do the Deshaun Dev Tunnel. We're going to do Java.com. Oh, and you know what else I need to do? The other thing I need to do is I need to deploy the, nope, just kidding. When I deploy the secrets, each cluster, oh, we'll see. Because that's one thing that I did. That is another thing that I spent time on since the last live stream was how I'm getting these secrets deployed. So let's take a look. Let's see how things are going over here. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to see if I can kickstart that. Oh, there we go. We're running. I'm going to do the same thing here and here. And let's see if we can get up and running. I was missing some secrets. So this is a rebuilt cluster, and I was trying to show how easy it is to deploy this tenant to this new cluster. Let's see what's happening. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Yeah, there's something missing. Is there? Did they come up? So we have the route set up. They said they're terminating. I have open Zipkin. But because I'm using Cloudflare D, this should route to both. So let's take a quick peek. Let's go see what we got. javagrunt.com. This will work. Let's see if it stands up here. No, it didn't. I'm gonna hit refresh. Go, go, go. Okay, so it's hitting the other cluster. Watch, let's go kubectx, k3d juice, and I should see My gateway is up and running, and there it is. And it's probably going to stay there. If I go to Zipkin, yeah, so that I'm load balanced, that I'm doing active. I don't get to decide where that traffic goes unless I kill the traffic from one. But this is the fun part. This is where we're at. Active is the way to go. So we're running. Let me go back to the other cluster. Let me see if I can. Let's go back to the ARM64 cluster, the new cluster, and let's just see that everything's up and running. It is. It'd be nice to. It'd be nice to bump that, but we'll come back to that. We'll come back. I'm going to leave it deployed, and we'll just assume that everything's going to be deployed there. And it's also deployed to K3D Juice, which isn't up. But because I'm using Flux CD, when it does come up, it'll just get deployed automatically, which is kind of cool. So let's go back to K3D Juice. We're on my machine. We're building these things, and we've got this control. So again, platform hat. Let's go back to developer hat. Developer hat. I get to decide where things are going. So I've deployed my YouTube listener, and this is the predicate that I use. So again, everything's coming into my gateway. Common pattern. Everything's coming into my gateway. And I'm letting that gateway decide how to route traffic. So I can put my cross-cutting concerns. I can put my security here. I can say, hey, you've got to be authenticated before you get to these different things. The blue boxes are my infrastructure type things that you're going to get as a tenant. And then you've got your services, the tenant services, the things that we're going to deploy. And this is how we're going about it. So it's interesting, right? We're growing. We're kind of moving along in this path. And this is where we're at. So not only do I have these single tenant things, but now I'm saying, hey, like maybe this is the contract. Maybe you've got to provide a gateway. I think the idea of having that route config as a config map is a really good idea. Because then if you're a platform operator, you can kind of have insight. You don't have to go into that repository to see where the routes are set up for the different versions. So that might be a good thing to explore. But the cool thing is right now, I've got these things deployed. And these are the routes. YouTube listener, this path predicate, I forward it to that service. That service is not exposed to the public. I rewrite, so that YouTube listener part that was on the predicate, that gets taken off and just gets passed to the root, for example. So here, when I'm passing this service, the YouTube listener part of the URL, because of the rewrite filter, it takes that part off and it's passing what's after that down to the service, down to this service. So if I go to the root YouTube listener, that YouTube listener gets chopped off, and this is what it's actually hitting. So that's kind of cool. Now on the Zipkin side, Zipkin, when you deploy Zipkin, it deploys everything to a Zipkin context. Tukes, Happy New Year. Welcome. Tukes, remind me where you're from. Happy New Year. We're talking about Spring Cloud Gateway. And one of the things, like when I was, watching others do things, I was always kind of like hoping to learn something, hoping to learn a trick. So the reason I'd watch Josh or Mark or Ted, right, it was like I was hoping that I could learn something along the way. I was hoping I'd figure something out and they'd teach me a trick. Maps. So, yes, Tukes, Algeria. In my head, I was wrong. Now I look at a map. Now I know where it's at. But now I know. Algeria. That's amazing. I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky. Thanks for joining. Happy New Year. Things are good. we have made a little bit of progress. Now we're bringing in Spring Cloud Gateway, and we're using Spring Cloud Gateway. This is where Spring Cloud Gateway was cool for me, is that when I'm doing these kind of things, I can route traffic. And of course, I can do all the weighting and all the other predicates and filters that I have available. Let's go take a look. All right, I've got tons of options here. Oh, that's something that we should also. Oh, look at this. Hello and welcome. I need to go look at a map. KYRGZSTN. Amazing. I feel so lucky. That's super cool. That's super cool for me. So welcome. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I'm so glad that everybody's here. Now, we've had fun so much so far this morning. One of the things I didn't talk about was Spring Cloud Gateway. By default, I get this reactive gateway, and that kind of came out from Zool, where we went from Zool was blocking, and then we're like, hey, yeah, that doesn't really scale. And then we're like, hey, let's do reactive. But others were like, yeah, I don't want to go reactive. So we have now this MVC Spring Cloud Gateway server. And that also, I think, came from the fact that we had virtual threads. So we could actually get some scale with an MVC model as long as we're using virtual threads. Abhishek, welcome. Oop, I just spilled my soda. Let me see if I can clean that up real quick before I lose my equipment. Please hold one sec. Oop. I don't have a lot of equipment, so I gotta take care of it. And yeah, I spilled soda. Oh, and yeah, you can see I'm pushing all the buttons for my lights because that's where I spilled the soda. It was on the lights button. All right, hopefully that helps. Hopefully I didn't break anything. I'll be more careful. I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate that a lot. So what I am trying to do is I'm going to work through some stuff. And I think what I want to do now is I just want to like go through the exact same thing, except we'll do it together. We'll do it from the beginning. So this idea is platform. I'm going to push out a new tenant called Redis Geek. I want to do, or do I need to do it that one? I just want to kind of like replicate what we've been doing. Do it again, right? Get another rep in so that it's sticky. And yeah, so I've got these other things. I don't even remember what's in this one. Maybe let's do it here. Yeah, let's do it here. So we're going to rinse and repeat. So if we look at JavaGrunt.com, we've got secrets. We don't need to deploy Redis just yet. We've got the Cloudflare D set up. I do have some updates that I need to do here because there's a new version of Cloudflare D. So let's just do that update. And then by doing it here, I'm doing the update for everywhere. All right, so hey, there's the new version. When I commit this file, because it's Flux CD, it'll just get deployed and I'll have that new version. What else? OpenZipkin. Let's deploy OpenZipkin. I think I'll be able to do the exact same thing. Let's take a look. The namespace is Flux. We'll just have to change the namespace of where it gets deployed. And that's the only thing. So I can literally take this, copy. And this is where Scott was talking about, it might be a good idea to use Crossplane so that I can wrap all these tenant concerns into a single API and be like, hey, I need a new tenant. I need to update this tenant so I can do it once and then have it applied to all my tenants. That sounds like a great idea. All right. I think that's something we should explore later. So here in Deshaun.io, I'm going to just change this tenant. And one of the other concerns that Scott brought up, was, are we going to be eating up resources? So right now, again, I'm doing this on my laptop. Because I'm using Knative serving, these services, a lot of them are going to get scaled to 0. But services like OpenZipkin, Loki, Prometheus, these aren't going to scale to 0. So his concern was like, are we going to be eating up too many resources? We'll see. Right? That's part of it. We'll see. So let's deploy OpenZipkin. I think everything else is fine. So if we just do this, what's missing is the way that we've set up our gateway. So right now, let's do this. Let's commit this, git status, git add tenants. So I'm going to deploy these changes that we just made. All right, git commit. We update Cloudflare D and add Zipkin. Okay, so now that should be deployed. Deshaun-io is deployed to my cluster. We can see it here. I've got Deshaun-io. What we expect to see now is we expect to see an OpenZipkin show up. We expect to see a new version of Cloudflare D because we upgraded the version, and we expect to see an OpenZipkin instance stand up. We're just baby steps. We'll get there. But because we're using Flux CD, that's what we expect. The next thing we want to do is I kind of want to show you that there's an actual service here. There's services down here in JavaGrunt, but they're scaled to 0. So this is where, for those of you that have been around, this is where we show off the scale to 0 and auto scaling. So here's what I want you to do. Intro.deshaun.io. This is where you click on intro.deshaun. So we just saw that our Cloudflare D got a new version. It's been up for 14 seconds. And now I'm asking you to go to intro.deshaun.io. And what that should do is scale up that service, right? Because we're over here, we're looking intro.deshaun.io, calls a service, and it goes to that. It's already deployed. So you've got to do it. I'm not going to do it. There we go. So somebody went and hit intro.deshaun.io and it scaled up that service. It deployed 3 instances of it, right? If you hit it again, it'll scale a bunch, but it scaled it up from 0. So it was not deployed and now it's scaled up and now it's there. And you got a response that says, hey, how many days I've been in this job? Just simple, right? We're doing little things, making small progress. But the same with our YouTube, our listener, right? When we make a new video, it's going to call that YouTube listener service and it's going to stand up and automate and it's going to grab the YouTube event. And then we can capture it and we can do more things with it. But this is the idea. I don't need those things running all the time. I only do 1 or 2 videos a day. So I don't need that service consuming resources, even though it's only a native image. I still don't need that up and running all day. I can have a bunch of these workflows, things that are scaling up and scaling down when they don't need. And this, right? So right now we've got these up. I don't know what the window is. We can go take a look. But it'll scale down. I think it's 90 seconds. Everything is out in the open. Let's go here. And let's take a look at our definition. And it says, hey, our window is 15 seconds. So we're getting some stuff and it's been 15 seconds and nobody's hit that URL. So it scales down. So after 15 seconds, nobody hit the URL, it'll terminate. the system works. This is what we want. So I can have this paying attention to the resources that I'm deploying. And yeah, and it'll come up and down and it'll do all the things. So this is fantastic. This is what we want. This is, maybe it's a default. So here, yeah, the gateway is scaling to 0, right? So the Cloudflare D ingress has to be there, right? That has to be there all the time. But the gateway does not. Cloudflare D is the piece that says, hey, here's where you're going to send traffic. So first question, I don't need Spring Cloud Gateway deployed. So let's take a quick look over here at JavaGrunt. You can see that the gateway is not deployed. And then if we go to javagrunt.com, it might hit the other instance, but it wasn't before. Hey, it's there. We expect, there it is. Our gateway stands up and it routes the traffic. So it doesn't need to be there because it's a native image and it stands up real fast. Doesn't need to be there. So I can scale it down. DMOC then asks, why is it scaled to 3 instances? Only because I said that's what I wanted to do. So if I can control that here. I said, hey, when you scale up, give me 3 instances. At max, do 100 instances. Go up to 100 instances. But how are you going to measure how many to scale up? Based on the requests per second. If you get more than 1 request per second, scale it up. So if you hit intro, and you hit refresh a bunch of times, it'll scale up that intro service, adding 3 at a time, up to 100 max. So let me do that in another window. And you can feel free to play along. Intro.deshawn.io, and I'm gonna hit refresh a bunch of times, and let's see if we can get it to scale up a bunch. Fantastic. Hold on one sec. My boss. All right. So hopefully that answered that question. This is it scaled up 3 because that's what I asked it to do, and I can configure that. So the other part there, excuse me, was the window. So measure request per second with a target of 1 in this 15-second window. So that's where I hit refresh, and I can scale it up a bunch in that 15-second window, and it'll scale up to 100. So if I get 33 requests in 1 second, I will get up to, or if I get 33 requests in a 15-second window, it'll scale up to 100 instances of that service. But anyway, that was just for show. So I can change it. If we go over and we look at the gateway, right, the job.com gateway, let's go and look at that one. I don't have to do it that way, right? So here, we just looked at the gateway service. It's scaled to 0. And I said, hey, this is what it looks like in a 1-second window. So I want you to stay up. I said max of 1. Right, in my dev on my laptop, hey, max of 1. That works, right? In a 60-second window. So if I get a request, I don't know what the defaults are. Maybe I should do that RPS. But yeah, it's got some default, but if there's no requests after 60 seconds, it'll scale down. So hopefully that helped. That's valid. I'm showing, hey, here's some secrets that we're deploying, but let's do this exact same thing for now. So now JavaGrunt.com, that scales up. The gateway scales up. It's cool. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to play a gateway for Deshawn-IO. So here, this is where, yeah, we get into the fun stuff, right? Let's go to start.spring.io. And let's do this. I'm going to pull this gateway over here. And I'm going to look at it on the side. Because I may not want to do all the stuff. But I'm going to look at the Palm file. And we're going to just kind of replicate. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about what that looks like. Here, we're going to do Maven. I'm going to use 3.2.1. My naming convention, it's io.sean service. And the artifact is gateway. And the name is going to be, actually, I'll just leave that here. And we're going to add Spring Cloud Gateway. And we're going to add, we always add actuator, right? Because we're going to production. We want to be production ready. And what else? Oh, yep, we're going to add Zipkin. And do I want to add a Redis instance? I don't think I need to yet. So we won't add Redis just yet. DevTools, of course. And GraalVM. And test containers. Hello? Oh, that was weird. And what else? I think that's it. So cool. Here's our project. Spring Cloud Gateway. We have the actuator. We're going to have Zipkin for observability. And we're just going to build this. So let's generate. Is there anything else I'm missing? Let's generate that. And we'll do this. Yep, replace it. And then let's do this. Let's go to fun. Let's see, fun, Sean-io. And then let's unzip that gateway. And then let's move, or let's do this. Let's make that repository. Because we're going to do all the stuff with the GitOps, right? GitHub Sean-io. And now here's the thing. Because I'm doing this, I want feedback. Like, does this seem like this could be automated, right? But I have this kind of convention. Of course, we're going to do it public as much as possible. So let's create that repository. And then let's do this. Ph repo clone Sean-io io.sean.service.gateway. So now I just clone that empty repository. And then I'm going to move everything from gateway. Right? You can see that. Let me make that bigger. I'm going to move everything from gateway to that IO gateway. And then there's a couple of dot directories. Move gateway.mdn to IO gateway and move gateway.getignore. Okay, so now that's empty. We got rid of that directory. Now we go into here and we should be able to open that up. And here we are. Now, we talked about conventions. Out of curiosity, why do you use reverse domain for group ID? Well, one is for like organizing, sorting. If I'm here, and I think that's convention, right? Especially in Java. Let's go and take a look. Yeah, that's just by convention. I don't know if I have a reason. For me, it's like when I'm looking in my repository, I have a clear clear distinction on where my services are, where my listeners are. I have those things broken up into their types, the patterns that I use. So it's easy for me to distinguish, and it's just a convention. It makes it simple for me to know, like, hey, here's what's being deployed. It tells me what domain, what tenant it's being deployed to. So I'm kind of explaining how things are being deployed and where they're being deployed to. But yeah, that's a good question. I do this out of habit and experience, because what we had in the past was I'd have something like Edge service that was in this Deshaun.io. It would just be called Edge service. But then what if in Deshaun-dev I had another Edge service, or I had an intro web? By doing it this way, I'm saying exactly where it lives. So, and you can see that in all of this. If I go in all of those, because I've been in this multi-domain, multi-tenant, lifestyle. When you're deploying, especially from a manager platform concern and from a developer concern, you want to kind of know, like, where does this live? What am I looking at? And that's one way. So that's I think a good question. And yeah, that comes out of, it's a convention I've learned along the way. And also, like here, I think I got it from like here. Like that's Maven repository convention, right? As I'm deploying these things, right? That's kind of the convention that we see, where it's got the domain github.com and the group ID and then the artifact ID. So yeah, I think it's kind of a learned convention that I've adopted. I'm glad that little thing, there's no question that's too small. And those kind of questions, like I should have had an easy answer for that. But I had to think about it. So asking questions again is, this is an important part, right? But like here, like if you're here and you've got questions, like ask them. If you come to my house for dinner and you leave hungry, that's your fault. If you're here and you've got questions about anything and you don't ask, that's your fault. Just don't leave hungry. So ask your questions. Thank you, DMOC, for asking that. Hello, where's my, there we go. So thank you for asking that. So we're going to try to do this same thing that we've done. The example I have deployed, we're just going to redo it now for this new service. So a new tenant comes in and, hey, we got to set up this cluster. But I talk about these conventions and what I have done. GitHub.com, Sean. I have this tool, this command line tool, that has my conventions built in. Like it does the things that I need it to do. And you could deploy this anywhere. I think it should be a platform and a CLI, right? There should be a way for you to adopt these conventions easily. Ideally, we've got something like a backstage that's got some app accelerator. Some place where it says, hey, here's the conventions, here's why we do things this way. There should be some resource that says, hey, here it is. But also, I want that CLI, because in my path to production, I'm going to use it anyways. I'm going to use this exact same CLI to make sure that things are lined up and we're following the best practices, the conventions of the platform. So here, let's do this, because I think I made changes. So let's go here. We're in fun. Let's go to Deshaun, and let's go to that initializer plus. I'm just going to grab the latest version and git pull. Uh-oh. Git diff. What is this? Oh, I don't need that. Git checkout. All right, so we made some changes. So let's do this. MNW-P native. We're gonna build that little CLI. We're going to build it native compile. Run the test, do the things. This will take a minute or so because I made some changes. I got the new conventions. Ideally, I've got a release and says, hey, here, but I know that my releases didn't work. Oh, wait. No, I don't have an OS X ARM64 release, so it's not there. So I need to build it. Cool. So we're building that local. Apologies. This is going to take a sec. But I'm going to take this thing that I built at start.spring.io. I'm going to apply the conventions that make my path to production work. And I've got a CLI that does the things for me. So we'll make it look like all the other projects. So I don't have a mess and I don't have to like chase around and figure out how different teams, different tenants are handling things. I'm giving the tenants, hey, here's the rules. Here's the conventions that we want. Here's the way that we take things to production so we can have some consistency. All right, so we've got this thing. Let's just install it. Target initializer plus plus. We're gonna install that to user local bin initializer plus plus. Big boy. And now let's go back to our project. We gotta do all our passwords. Okay, and now I've got this project, and hey, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Like, and any feedback, anything is, feedback is welcome. So now I'm saying, hey, I just grabbed this thing from the initializers from start.spring.io. Let's do the extra things to make this project one that's going to ride on my platform. So I'm going to just do the shell, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to change the project version, the defaults. I want to change the project description, and I want to do the multi-arch builder, like my builder, so I can build x86 images and ARM64 images. Like, let's throw that in there. I also want to do the multi-arch manifests because I automatically want to build on GitHub and on Circle CI. I don't want to do that for my platform. So let me pause there. I don't want to do that for my platform. I do that as an example to show here's how you do it, but I'll have my platform, my builder cluster will do the same thing. I put these manifests out there so that you've got an example that you can pull from. And what else? I got to do my extensions. I get tab completion because it's a Spring shell. And then I want to add a README. What else do we need to do? I can say help. Is there anything else I missed? I did the project description. I don't need a Lambda profile. I did the project version. I don't need Spring REST docs. I'm not going to do that. I did project name. I did those things. I think we're good. So I've done all the things. Quit. Status. Now I can go take a look. Like what did I do? I added a README. Just a default README. Does it have anything in it? Oh, I got to do some search replace here. So let's replace this. Oops. And let's replace this. Again, conventions. I could probably fix this. Make it a little bit. All right, replace those. And yeah, we're good. Like, what is this? Quick start. It's going to look like this. MVNW Spring Boot Test Run. Yeah, so my POM file, I'm updated. I got all my versions. Just taking a quick peek. That will come from my extension. I got my extensions set up. I'm using JGitver. That allows me to deploy the tags snapshots is false. Dirty is false. I've got these manifests deployed. I think I have to make a change here. Right. I need this. I need to change this version. Please hold. I got to fix this in my. I got to fix it in my initializer. Bring it up to Java 21. It's not doing anything there. I think this is all set. I think that's the only change I need on this one. And then over here on GitHub. See, ideally, all these are just done, right? We want that CLI to do all this stuff. I shouldn't have to do all this fluff. I think I made some other changes here, though. Like this. I don't need this. Or maybe I can just do it this. io.sean.service.gateway. I think I can do that. So then here, I can make this 21. Build image, push that image, do all the things, retry, image name. Yep, I think this might work. Let's just see. So the way that it's set up is all the conventions are there. I've got a couple of issues I need to fix in my initializer. Let's just do that real quick. Let's say issues. In the multi-arch NFS. And what was the other thing I did? I think that's the main one. So I got an issue. We'll get back to that later. So here, we're good. Let's do this. Get status. Get add dot. Get status. Like, hey, all we've done is we started a new project. We applied our conventions. And now we're saying, yeah, let's go. So let's do this. NW Spring Boot test run. Is it going to work? Go to the things. Starting up Zipkin. All right, cool. It starts. We didn't do any routes. So let's add, actually, let's just leave it right here. So this is like, just to start, this is a Spring Cloud Gateway. Get status, git commit, initializer, plus, hit push. So this is out in public. You can see it. Let's go. If you want to play along, github.com, sean-io. And here's our project, our gateway service. And we're just going to try to like rinse and repeat. We're going to make this muscle memory. We're going to do it. So, hey, we're out here. We've got a little initializer. We got a README. We don't need any more suggestions. So here's our project. And it's ready. And it's got these workflows. The workflows didn't go. And you're actually like, hey, how come you didn't build anything? Because I didn't give it a version. If I do this, git tag be 0.0.1, again, I've got this as part of my conventions. It's going to look for those version tags before it does anything. It's only going to do things when there's a version tag. So if I do git tag v0.0.1, git push origin v0.0.1, now there's a tag. Now my actions are going to be like, hey, I got something to do. Let me go build that artifact for you. And it's going to build and it's going to follow all the conventions. And again, this is a platform concern. I don't want you, developer, have to worry about it. You just tell me the tag. I'm going to go back here. We're going to go in to my Flux repository. And we're going to make a change. Here, I'm going to do that locally. Let's do file, open. The nice thing is I could totally do that. Hello. Fun. Let's make it by name. Fun. Deshaun.io. And let's open. Oh, I don't even have it. Let's do this. Where am I? Fun. Sean.io, GitHub repo clone Sean-io flux. You do this too. You feel free to play along. If I go into here and I do idea, let's open up that guy. Are you opened up somewhere? Boop. Here we go. So we're in that repository and we're gonna say, hey, you know what? I want to deploy one more thing. This is how the tenant hat says, I want to deploy something to production. Okay, yeah, I want to deploy something to production. And we're going to say, let's, 3 max scale. Let's make it a 9. Sure. Actually, no, let's do this one. I think that'll work. Picking numbers, DMOC, doesn't matter. I'm making numbers, trying to show this thing scale up, except our service, we're going to call it gateway dash service. It's in that same namespace, and the image service gateway v0.0.1. That's the one I want deployed. Please deploy that for me. Oh, and look at, maybe I do want to have it deployed with Zipkin as well. So cool. I don't need this one. I just need this. Here we're saying, yeah. Do this Zipkin endpoint, except it won't be at java.com. It'll be at Sean-io. In that namespace, that's where it's going to be. Does that look right? Fantastic. So that Zipkin endpoint, I need to set that up in my properties, but we're good. This is going to deploy. This will be just fine. So in order to do that, get status, we're making 2 changes. We're saying, hey, I want you to deploy both of these files. And in this file, this new file, here's how I want you to deploy v001. So get add dot, get status, yes please, get commit. Now, Flux, take care of that. Let's see what we got. So we've got let's go bring it back down a little bit. We deployed our Cloudflare D 30 minutes ago. Now we're saying, hey, I want you to deploy this gateway service. But that gateway service isn't there yet. Kube. Let's do can service /a. So it says, hey, I see this. I see what you're trying to do. Now I expect gateway service to show up here. Hey, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful, Robotech. Icon is here. Like, we got the gang. We're hanging out. We're doing stuff. So I'm feeling pretty good. Right now I'm concerned because I expect a gateway service to be here. Did I not push it? I did. Let's do it this way. Let's see if that shows up. I might have to kick it a little bit because I want that Deshaun-io gateway service to show up here. And I might not have my setup the right way. So do the sync. I think this is right though. Yeah, it should be checking every minute. And it's definitely there, right? So why is it not here? This is interesting. But for some reason, I think there's like a 5-minute somewhere. But here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go over here to Flux Control. I'm gonna say, hey, I don't want to wait. I don't know where the timeout is. And I put this in the docs too. Right? If I do kube ctx-c, I'm in the right cluster. I just want to like just kick it, like do the things, make sure that everything's running. So just run this command. Like go, just make sure everybody's deployed on that cluster. Now, I really hope that it shows up here because that's what we're trying to do. It says all components are healthy. No, they're not. I don't see gateway service for Deshaun-io. I'll change this in a sec. But you know what else I don't see? I don't see Zipkin. Oh, did I do something? Okay, so Deshaun-io, I didn't change this, right? I need to add this. Yeah, I didn't do that. So let's do that. Git add dot, get status, get, nope. I didn't want to add that readme, did I? That's fine. Oh, there's my SOP stuff. Yeah, that's fine. Git commit add Zipkin. Okay, we want to see Zipkin show up here, and we want to see case service, and we want to see gateway service here. We haven't done a whole lot. This should be easy. This should be easy to get out the door. We can do this customizations. All right, this one, gateway service. So that failed. Emission webhook denied the request. So this is working, but this. Oh, you know why? You know why? Because it might not be done. So over here, we said, hey, I want you to deploy version 1, but version 1 might not exist yet. Oh, and it failed. That's why it doesn't exist. Let's take a look and see what happened. Our build failed. It says an image does not exist locally with tag Deshaun-io, Deshaun Service Gateway. Let's go see what happened. In my POM, when I set up the config, project name should be, oh, did I do the project name? I didn't, I forgot to do project name. Initializer ++ project dash name. There we go. That should fix it. Again, those conventions. So my bad. I made a mistake. So now watch git status. Let's just git add that change. Git commit. Fix project name. Git push. But the git push isn't all. I want to say, hey, I want to deploy this new one. Git tag v0.0.2. Git push origin v0.0.2. So actually build me a new version, and then let's jump over here and say, you know what? I want that version deployed. 0.0.2. Git ops. Everything's in Git. I'm not doing any UI stuff. I'm saying, hey, deploy version 2. And we should be set. So these things should kick off. I don't like looking at busted versions. I already looked at it. I've already diagnosed it. I don't want to look at it again. It hurts my feelings. So now this is building. It's building over here. This is the x86 version. Oh, you know what? Circle CI. We probably didn't add the project, and we probably should do that. So let's do that quick. Let's log in. We're old school. We've got to add this new project here. We got to go over to Deshaun.io, and we've got to add a project. This one. Set it up. Yes. Main. Go. So now this one's going to go. Am I going to have to redo it? So this one didn't get kicked off because, can I fire it? I think I'm going to have to do this. Oops, not here. Here. I want both of them to build. Git tag v0.0.3. Git push origin. I didn't have it set up. I didn't have the project set up over in Circle CI. So now I do. So Circle CI is going to do a build, and GitHub's going to do a build. Why? Why, you ask? Because I deploy things to Raspberry Pis. So I've got my code, but I'm building an image, x86. This is in GitHub. Oops. And then over here in Circle CI, I build an ARM64 image because I'm deploying to Raspberry Pis. And when you're doing native images, so I'm taking, well, let's back up. Let's just remind what we're doing here. Bytecode. And this is, again, you've probably seen this many, many times, right? Java gets compiled into bytecode. Bytecode gets ran on a Java virtual machine. And anywhere that bytecode can run on any Java virtual machine, which means it can run on any operating system. So we've had this for a long time. This was the big deal about, this is a very good question. Do you build for Raspberry Pi 32-bit also? So you and I, we've had this conversation. Right? The reason why I'm giving Robotech my Raspberry Pi Zeros is because they are 32-bit. They can't do the 64-bit Arch, right? So GraalVM, what we're doing here is, this is what we've had for a long time, right? If I do this, if I take the bytecode, I can run bytecode on a JVM. Can I run bytecode? Is there a Raspberry Pi 32-bit JVM? I believe. I'm looking here. I believe there is a 32-bit JVM. So I could take this bytecode and I could run it. I found one for Java 17, but not 21. Oh my goodness. I am so happy. Mr. Gershman, I am so happy that you're here. I'm just like, what a great way to start the year. I found one for Java 17, but not Java 21. So yeah, Azul. That's where I was looking. I think they have a 32-bit. But this is what happened. The JVM is big, and I do it that way. And what we had with Java for a long time is we had this thing in our JVM. We had the hotspot, right? And what the hotspot was doing was like, it says, hey, I see that you've got this code right here that you're executing a lot, right? After you're doing stuff, it says, hey, I see that you're executing this a lot. And what it would do was it would take that bit of code and it would optimize it and give you native code. The JVM knows what operating system you're running, and it says, hey, I can optimize this little bit of bytecode all the way down to your operating system so you get the absolute fastest execution on this little bit. Well, then the GraalVM team, they said, hey, you know what? Why not just do it for everything? And that's where we get our AOT processing. That's where that AOT processing is. So what we're doing with GraalVM is we're taking, yeah, there you go. I'm excited for you. I got another Raspberry Pi 5, and that Pi 5 is deployed. It's not in the cluster yet, but I did get a Raspberry Pi 5. I have two more on the way, and yeah, we're getting all those deployed. So because we're using Raspberry Pis, we want these little images. We don't want the JVM. We're going to use GraalVM, and that's what we're doing here. We're using GraalVM to analyze all the bytecode, analyze all the branches of the bytecode, and it's going to say, oh, you're not using that, throw it away. We're only going to take the bits that you're using at compile time. So the way that it's compiled, that's how it changes. There's a lot of trade-offs. But we're saying at compile time, this is the way that you're set up. We're going to optimize that, and we're going to give you native binary. So if I was on Windows, I get a .exe, but we're going to do Linux images. So we're getting these tiny little native images that start up fast, right? There's no JVM. They only have the bits of the JVM that they need and the bits of Tomcat that it needs. So it's going to give all of the same output. I'm running my Spring Boot enterprise grade applications, Actuator, Tomcat, Spring Cloud Gateway, Reactive, all the things are optimized for x86 and for ARM64. And because we're running on Raspberry Pis and on Nooks, right? I build this little manifest over the top. So if you're on x86, you'll get the x86 image. If you're on ARM64, you'll get the ARM64 image. So that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm doing it. It's because I want these little images, these tiny little images, to run on these Raspberry Pis. That's what we're deploying. So we're over here. We have one building for ARM64, a native image. And we're here. Oh, not there. I can close that one. I can close that one. We're here. What this has done is this job says, hey, I've built the x86 version. Now, as soon as I can pull down that ARM64 version from Circle CI, as soon as I do that, I'm going to glue them together into a manifest. And it's got a little retry loop that it does. Hey, Aaron. Yes. Yeah. Aaron, we need to chat, catch up. Happy New Year. Thanks for dropping in. And yeah, I would love to hang out and chat sometime soon, please. Jonas says, how do I get an image that is built for my Raspberry Pi? Do I need to build the image on the Pi? You need to build it on somewhere that has ARM64 because those native images, I know some people are doing the emulator path. You can do the emulator route and have it emulate the ARM64 stuff, but then it takes a really, really long time. If you build it on Raspberry Pi, it'll take a really long time. I think when I was building, again, and this is now a couple years ago, my images that I built on Raspberry Pi used to take about an hour. But then people started using my builder, and they were using the Mac Apple Silicon when that came around, And then I had to adapt, and I started building on bigger ARM64 machines. I went out and I was using Oracle Cloud, and now I'm using Circle CI. Circle CI has ARM64 runners. So these manifests that I'm pushing out here, they show you how to do it. So this is all the information you need to run on Circle CI to build an image that you can run on your Raspberry Pi. So that's my recommendation is, for now, build the images, the native images that you're going to run on your Raspberry Pi, build them on Circle CI. Yep, build them on Circle CI. It's just got to be a public repo. You can do it for free. And the other option, right? You don't have one, right? The other option is Oracle Cloud, and I'm here to help. Right? GitHub.com. Sean. I have this. I think it's called TFOCI that I got from Lee. Yep. This repository has Terraform to set up a ARM64 VM in Oracle Cloud in their free tier and connect it to your Tailscale so you can do builds. This is what I used to do. Is before I switched over to Circle CI, this is where all my ARM64 builds happened, was over on this ARM64 VM. So here's another option. If you don't want to check out Circle CI, here's an Oracle Cloud ARM machine that you can run. Here's the Terraform, and I'm happy to jump into that. So Jonas, I'm a big fan. I'm so glad you're here. So whenever you're ready to like kick the tires, if you want to like pair on this, if you want to like work together and set up one of these, like just say so. Like we can do it on the stream or not. But I'm happy to just kind of like jump in and let's get this up and running so you can build these images. And I'm trying to do all this in public so you have all the stuff that you need to do it. And it usually works. You know, if you connect the dots, it usually works. So now we'll see that we've got a manifest that's built, and we've got this ARM64 and x86 image, but all we have to do is ask for that version, and then we should see it's still not there. Oh, it says unknown reconciliation in progress. Oh, I feel like maybe there's something else that I'm missing here. What could possibly, why is this not working? So let's take a look. Sean IO. Yeah. There you go. Like, fantastic. And remember, you only need one image. You only need one node to run K3S, to run that cluster. So start with one. But if I haven't shown you already, I'm a big fan of K3SUP. This is the tool that I use to stand up clusters. I think I put those instructions here as well. I hope I did. Yeah, how I'm setting things up. Here's how I set up my K3D cluster. Did I set up? Yep. Here's how I set up that server, add nodes to that cluster. There's a good example. I'm disabling traffic because I deploy Knative serving, which I use the contour included with Knative serving. But yeah, like there we go. Fantastic. That's the thing, right? Yeah, let's keep things in public. Let's learn together. Because I know you're gonna do amazing things, and I'm excited to steal your code and learn from you. So yeah, let's do it in public. So I'll pause here. Actually, I'll like take a look. This still says reconciliation. It says this dry run failed. So I did something wrong, and I'm gonna try to diagnose. But while I'm trying to diagnose this, let's just make sure. I'm gonna wrap up here pretty soon. I just want to do a last call. Like, what are you working on? What are you stuck on? Right? I'll figure this out. I've done it once. We're just gonna rinse and repeat. What are you stuck on? What are you working on? If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or like, tell me what's cool. What have you been doing? But like, let's have a little conversation while I try to diagnose. And I'll think out loud while I'm diagnosing. So I said, hey, Cloudflare D, but if you got anything, let me know. This shouldn't matter. We have our stuff deployed. I shouldn't need to make a change to this yet. The only thing, yep, RBAC, all the namespace is set up proper. We're syncing to the right directory. And then in that Flux repo, this repo should be there. Deshaun, let's just go make sure. Hub.Deshaun, this is where all of my images will land. Hey, there it is, Deshaun IO, Deshaun Service Gateway. It's been pulled down 5 times. How? Why? Oh, I wonder if it's retries. Zipkin got deployed. And I do can service list -A. Yeah, the gateway service isn't deployed. So let's take a look. So I'm going to go to customizations. Oops. I hit colon customization. I want to hit tab. There we go. So on this one, I'm just going to hit enter. I want to dig in. And it says progressing with retry, reconciling, dry run failed, bad request, admission webhook. Denied the request, validation failed. Oh, here it is. Activation scale must be greater than 1. There we go. So this is, I was making changes over here. Why did activation scale? Let's say 2. Really? Let's just make it 3. Get status. We're just fixing the activation scale. That was our problem. Get add dot. Get commit. Activation scale must be greater than 1. Cool. Now that we should be able to see this, hopefully, we'll see this change, and then we'll have a gateway service deployed. And all we did was kind of replicate, and that took 30 minutes. Definitely too long, but this is something that you probably won't be doing that often. But now we're setting up that gateway service. So then as a tenant, I can handle the routes without having to open up a ticket and do the ticket ops. Oh, you ran into the same error yesterday. Awesome. We're learning. We're figuring things out. And there we go. So now our tenant is applied. We have this namespace applied. So now if I back out and I hit colon, oops, hit escape, hello, colon PODS, I should see, oh, I shouldn't see it because it's scaled to 0. But if I do this, kn service list -A, I should see it here. There it is. So gateway service does not have any ready revision. So it might still be pulling down the image, and that's okay. We're going to give it just a sec. Let's go take a look here. We said Deshaun IO, Deshaun Service Gateway V002. I think I need to be on V003. Yep, I do. All right, so let's change that real quick. Git add dot, git commit, V0.0.3. Sorry about that. All right, so now we've pushed, we said, hey, sorry, not V002, use V003, and hopefully we'll get our our version here in just a minute. And that's it. Again, I appreciate you. It's 2024. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to be here every day from 8:30 to 10:30, just as like a, it's start of the day for some of us. It's the end of the day for some of us, just as a way of saying hi. I'll always be working on something, but I'm not trying to get anything into production. My job, I'm a Spring developer advocate. If you're doing Spring, I'm here to advocate for you. So I want to be here as somebody you can ask questions to, right? It's the thing that I wish I had when I was a developer. I wish I had somebody I could reach out to and say, hey, I've got a question. DMOC says, I have a feeling the gateway approach configuration moved into the code. Does it make config more complex and error prone? So we talked about this earlier with Scott. Honestly, I don't typically do the config this way. So what DMOC is saying is, let's go over to this other example. I'm a big fan of this config approach, the DSL that I have, so I can configure my routes. But you have options, right? There are some things here in my gateway application. I've set it up here in my, not in this one, in my Java Grunt Service Gateway. It's over here. What I've done here is I have all the routes defined inside of my class. So I've got a new build. Anytime I change my route. And I could do that. I could do it in code as well. So I can test it and validate it, and I can have all that. But I really like this ability. I can set up all of this as just a config. I could take all of this and set up as a config map, and Spring Cloud Gateway knows how to convert that and set up those routes. So I wouldn't have to do a build and deploy in order to make changes. I could do a git change. I could do a git commit on a config map and apply it to a Kubernetes cluster. Like maybe I want to hide Zipkin. The way I'm doing it now with this application YAML inside my code, I've got to do a new build in order to get that pushed out. But if I do my config separately, if I deploy my config separately from my artifact, then I can do it as a git commit. I can roll back. I can have a lot easier, faster change, faster response, faster feedback loop. And I think that's the right approach. That's what I've typically done in the past is I put all this into a config system somewhere, Git, and I was just making my changes for my routes there. That I think is the ideal way to do it. But we're going to come up with a convention here, and it might be error prone. But if it's in Git and it's a Git commit, then it's easy to roll back, right? Yeah. And should we have tests? So that's the other thing is like, let's explore that for just a sec. Do I want to have tests for all of these? Yeah, I think maybe you do. But those tests become interesting because when I'm deploying locally, when I'm working locally, like watch, right? This route won't work when I'm deploying locally. In order to do this, I'd have to have a different config for when I'm working locally. For in my path to production, my CI, right? My CI system. I have to have a different approach, right? Again, one of my famous drawings, right? Somewhere we're going to do a build. Somewhere in our path to production, we're going to do a build, and we want to test all these routes, make sure these routes are working properly. So somewhere I should have a way of standing everything up and validating those routes, either my integration tests or my end-to-end tests. But those values are going to change depending on where you are. So I can't just test these production routes. Now, what I could do, another approach here, is I've got this health Z. When I go to javagrunt.com and I say actuator health, it's going to, uh-oh. What happened? Oh, what did I do? Did I break? I broke. Oh, I know. I know what happened. I'm pretty sure that what happened was here, where, remember I deployed it to multiple services or to multiple clusters, K9s. I bet you that the gateway for JavaGrunt didn't happen here. And I'll bet you that it, again, keeping this stuff in my head, not a great idea. We're trying to teach ARM64. I'll bet you it went over to the other cluster and there, nope. Everything is deployed. Wait, what happened then? I broke something. This isn't good. So let's back out. Let's try to fix this. Flux control. We're gonna take this out. We're gonna try to delete, get status, get. And it's okay. Like, I'm very, very comfortable having things broken because we're going to learn something here. I don't think I have that. I did to Tanzu, but I don't think Tanzu is up. But let's just do that just in case. Right, that machine can't be up. It's still in my backpack. So the only place that tenant should be deployed, all right, is K3D juice. All right, so cool. That tenant's deployed. Now, what is wrong? Why is it saying I can't? We're on ARM. Let's switch back. K3D juice. And let's see what's happening. So it's not even getting to the gateway. Oh. No, that's right. It's not even getting to the gateway. What we expect when I go to JavaGrunt.com, Cloudflare D, when I go anywhere, I should be hitting this gateway service. Oops. Okay, service, and it's there. It should be there. But what's happening? I wonder if it's because of the ingress, but that's okay. Let's go back to our pods. Let's take a look. Oh, okay. So there, we're back to JavaGrunt, and the thing I wanted to show is JavaGrunt. Oop, here. That health. Actuator health is actually checking, like, hey, are you up? But it also checks, like, can you connect to Redis? Oops. So it's checking all the backing services to say, hey, can I connect to all the backing services? And then it's rolling those up to say, yes, I'm healthy. So we could do the same thing on these routes. Is I could say, hey, I can make an actuator, I can make a health endpoint, a health check that says, hey, for every route in my gateway, like, let's go make sure that I can reach those routes. And then decide, maybe that's something I can do as my validation. Because what if that route's down? Like, what if here's the other thing. I've got a route that's going to GitHub pages, right? That's what the route goes to. It goes to a GitHub pages. Like, I want to validate the route works, but what if that service is down? Does that mean my code is broken or the route's configured right? So we have some decisions to make, right? Something like smoke tests, right? But is that a test that prevents me from going to production? Like, let's say that one of those backing services is down, one of those routes is down, and that backing service didn't stand up right. Is it my code? You got to make sure that you're testing what's in your code. Is the route defined in the right way? So yeah, there's some extra conversations that need to be had around here. And I chose not to do like a Spring REST docs. It would be, the one way that I would say, hey, I want to make sure, right, just like I did here, my defaults, right? Like, I could have documentation that says these are the routes that are set up. So against this gateway, I could say, hey, these are the routes that are set up. You can go and validate these routes, and I could test them as a part of my path to production, and I could verify that the routes exist and the routes work. I could do that. And I could document it. So I could do the smoke test. And maybe that's one way of doing it. I say, like, hey, yeah, here's all the routes that should be in place, and I validated them based on that test. And yeah, that leans back into like the route config. But I'm out on the edge. So I think one of the other interesting things is I don't expect, right? Let's go back up here. When I'm doing things on the edge, I also think the gateway has a test framework to validate predicates and filters based on the URL. It does. And so does Cloudflare D. So the thing is if you're changing those routes, predicates, filters, etc., if you're putting that into your code, then you can run the test against it. But if I'm putting it into my config, then what? Right? Then I've got to pull that config down and then kind of generate tests based on the config. Right? If I'm making these dynamics, because here's one of the things. Like, if I'm running things out on the edge, one of the things that I is, let's see. When I'm building things, like, I don't expect, we need to be able to handle the cases where there is no connectivity, where we're disconnected from the world. And Scott brought up one of these points earlier too. I was like, this is another reason why I want to have some of these services on a per tenant basis, is so that, oh, hold on. One of the things is, what if there is no connectivity? Like, having things, what if I can't pass things on? I want to have kind of a buffered queue, for lack of a better term. I want to be able to take actions. I want to be able to keep running, even though I don't have all the information from the other clusters. I want to be able to take action locally. So that's another concern that I'm kind of boiling into this approach. But good questions. Good questions. So maybe let's explore that next time. And then, yeah, speaking about next time, what should we do next time? Like, what are some things that you guys are interested in learning? I'm going to be back here tomorrow. I'll probably keep on going with this. I will rinse and repeat and just try to, like, yeah, we'll add in some Prometheus. We'll show some another cool project, the RSocket Prometheus Gateway proxy. This one. I'm a big fan of this project, especially when we're doing things on the edge. the idea is like, I'm going to deploy this cluster out to a tree. And yeah, I don't know what the IP address is, but I want to get metrics from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some proxy. I'm going to have some home that's going to say, hey, I want to send you my metrics, and open up a two-way conversation to say, hey, yep, here's my metrics. And then that RSocket proxy will know where to go and scrape those metrics from. We'll get into this definitely this week using this project because I'm also going to do it internally. Right? If I say, hey, this is how you're going to have your metrics collected, we're doing RSocket, we're doing Prometheus and Grafana. If I've given you some defaults of how to do that, you don't have to figure out how to set up the scraping. I can make this really easy. You don't have to set up the scraping endpoints. I'm just going to give you the URL to your Prometheus or to your RSocket proxy, and then you just say, hey, here's where I am, and then it'll do the scraping for you, and then I can send that off to Prometheus. It's fun. We'll talk about that. But what are here's a good question. Do you use a specific OS for the Raspberry Pi Zeros to work with the Kubernetes setup? Yes, I do. I use Ubuntu. I just use Ubuntu server. So let's take a look. Let's do, no, not this one. Let's do kubectx, the ARM64 one, because there's differences. So you'll see here that I'm using Ubuntu, but it's different flavors of Ubuntu because these are different devices. This is a Le Potato, and they only have LTS versions of Ubuntu. On the Raspberry Pis, I'm using the latest and greatest. On this Ampere, I'm using the latest and greatest. But you can see that these are different kernels. Right? The cool thing about Kubernetes is giving me that abstraction over my infrastructure. But I do have to use Ubuntu. I can't use the Raspberry Pi or Raspi OS. I can't use that because in the kernel, one of the features that I need in order to do the scaled zero, one of the features I need with Knative serving, and actually I wrote a blog, I think. Is I needed some of the features that are on by default in Kubernetes or in Ubuntu that are not available in the Raspberry Pi OS by default. So what I was having to do with the Raspberry Pi OS was reconfigure a kernel and rebuild a kernel in order to get Knative serving running. So the question is like same with the controller. So yeah, I default to Ubuntu these days. And for the control nodes and for the agent nodes. And I'm going to see if I can find, I think it was this. Yeah, here's my instructions, which I think I've shown you before. Yeah, cool. Yep, so you can do it with the magic URLs and everything. Fantastic. And there's more. But again, yeah, that's my recommendation. That'll be where I can provide the most help, and we'll have fun with it. Again, now, you need help, you call me, and we'll jump in, and we'll do this together. Or if you want to come on, you let me know. Send me a message, and we'll just set up a stream, and we'll come in, and we'll work through getting your cluster set up, because I think that is also... right? I've done a lot of this many times. I think it'd be fun to walk you through setting up your cluster. And I could talk through, what I did and why I made decisions. It'll make sure that I understand it, and it'll validate some of my assumptions that I made along the way. So this was fun. Thanks for showing up. As always, hey, hit the subscribe button, that like button. I appreciate you, whatever that is. But yeah, I'm having fun. I'll do the same thing tomorrow. And if you've got ideas on what you'd like to, don't, I mean, we'll take time. We'll go slow. And yeah, it'd be fun. But if you've got ideas for anything you'd like to do, you'd like me to cover or discuss or investigate, let me know. This is the stuff. This is where my head's at by default. Spring Boot, all the native images, fast startups. I'm doing Kubernetes. We'll continue to deploy more nodes to these Kubernetes clusters, and yeah, and we'll just keep on going. I don't really have a whole lot of goals for this. I'm having fun, trying to think out loud, and yeah, if you can pick up things passively, that'd be great. I will circle back and do some videos. So like the YouTube listener, I'm gonna make a short video on all the steps that we did, so that you can just rinse and repeat without just looking through the code. We'll kind of talk through all the decisions that we made. And yeah, that's what I'll be doing when I'm not live streaming. Is I'll try to put some of this content and put a blog together, etc., and just redo it. So we're gonna do something on a live stream, and then we'll make a video on a blog about what we did and what we learned and the decisions that we made, and we'll just keep on going that way. So we'll have fun, but we're gonna constantly learn. It's 2024. We're all gonna learn some new stuff. We'll try to be here regularly. Yeah, but I'll keep showing up, and whenever you get comfortable, yeah, we'll invite you on. One of the other goals that I have, Jonas, DMOC, Tukes, what would be awesome, well, again, like full transparency, is like, I want to see you up presenting at conferences. I can't do all of this stuff. I can't go all over the world, and you're spread out, right? If we can come up with something fun, I want to help you get over fear and get up on stage. I'm so happy that you're here, and that's a goal. Maybe not now, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, it would be awesome for me to feel like I helped somebody get up on stage and talk about cool things they did with Spring and Spring Boot. That's my goal. So thank you for showing up. It's been fun. I'm excited for 2024. I'm excited to keep on doing this. I love my job. And yeah, if you don't have any ideas, we'll just keep on doing what we're doing. And when you have something, yeah, throw it out there. We'll see if we can dig in. But until next time, yeah, thanks. And I hope to see you tomorrow. I'll get it scheduled. It'll be there. And yeah, the rest of the week. I should be here every morning the rest of the week at least. But yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll see you soon. Max, I appreciate you.